Awesome. So hi everyone, my name is Catherine Arnold. I'm the policy coordinator for the Graduate Student Association, and whether you are a brand new grad student or you've been here a couple terms and you just like a refresher, I'm happy to talk to you today about navigating the University of Waterloo policies for grad students. So today I'm going to give you a bit of a high level summary of the important policies for your time here at the University of Waterloo. And I'm going to hopefully equip you with a couple of strategies you can use when you run into confusing situations. We're not going to go into the nitty gritty detail of any of the policies because that stuff is kind of boring and not really important to know word for word unless you are studying political science, at which case feel free to go into the policies in strong detail. But the average student doesn't really need to know every single word in the policy, and so I'm not going to bore you with those kinds of details. So there are a number of policies, Waterloo policies, in your day-to-day operations as a graduate student. So anything and basically everything you do on campus is going to be governed by some sort of University of Waterloo policy. So your behavior on campus, like smoking and freedom of speech and your ethical behavior, is governed by Waterloo policies. The employment of you on campus, including teaching assistantship, or religious accommodation of your holidays in your employment. Those are also governed by policies at Waterloo, as well as your academics. And Waterloo tends to be a little bit unique compared to other universities, where we have policies governing our intellectual property that state that the creator of the intellectual property owns the property instead of the institution owning the property. And so we've got a little bit of detailed intellectual property that goes a little bit above and beyond the intellectual property policies that are common at most institutions. So here is can I move this? Yeah. So here is a list of common concerns that graduate students have had at various institutions. This was compiled by Brock University. And so for all graduate students, we all deal with concerns with academic integrity or grade evaluation concerns, supervisory concerns, things like that. And then for international students, they found that international students tend to need more help navigating university policies and procedures and interpreting the academic decisions and outcomes. And so we're going to talk a little bit about the different policies relating to these common concerns and where you can go for help going through any of these processes. So the number one place you can go for help is the Graduate Student Association. So the first step is things like this, where we try and give you information to equip you in terms of your general operation as a grad student. But we also do more in-depth and specific issue help. So the GSA actively helps students through confidential advising appointments. So we can help you break down whatever issue you're dealing with, what university policies it relates to, and how to navigate it, or what the best pathway forward would be. It's really not your job to know how to navigate all of the policies. It's our job to know that, and it's our job to help you do it. So we can help you navigate supervisor relationships, different grade concerns, and in some cases, filing a grievance or petition, which I'll talk about a little bit later. We can also help guide students to the other resources on campus. So you can come to us with any issue, and if we're not supposed to be the ones to deal with it, if there are better offices on campus to equip to deal with it, then we know how to get there and we can help you get there. There are also cases where we'll help accompany students to meetings with their department or their supervisor, or if a student is uncomfortable or doesn't know how to advocate for themselves very well, we can help and step in and do that. The primary role that helps with this is my good friend Ashley. She is our student wellness coordinator right now, and she does a lot of those confidential advising appointments. And you can schedule those by emailing her or by emailing the GSA office. And I'm going to bring you here to the GSA policy resources. So on the GSA website, if you just search GSA-UW, you'll get this homepage. And you can go to our services, advocacy and support, and we've got a lot of things that are just there for you to access as issues come up. funding options, GSA fees, departmental GSA support, legal and tax aid, health plans, things like that. We also have these buttons here. We have our policy flowchart, and we have which looks something like this. And so it helps you just identify some pathways you can follow to try and resolve the issues that you're dealing with. But again, that's not, you don't need to memorize these things. They're supposed to be there for when you need them. So we've got our policy flowchart here that will help you identify what policies are related to the specific issue you're dealing with. And we also have our overview of UW policies that kind of breaks down the big policies into more like manageable language. A lot of them use like high level policy writing like language, and so that can be difficult to understand or interpret. And so we try to make it as easy as possible for grad students, because we know that you're supposed to be researching chemistry, or you're supposed to be researching health sciences, or you're supposed to be researching computer engineering, and your job isn't to know all these things. That's our job. Of course, if you don't like the GSA, or if you're having a bad time with the GSA, or even before you go to the GSA, there are definitely other people you can go to for help on campus. So for all course-related things, you should be able to go to your instructor. And if you're having problems with your instructor, then you can talk to your supervisor or your department graduate coordinator about those things. Your supervisor and your department graduate coordinator, it's specifically their job to help you navigate the UW policies and the systems here at the university. So they should be your first point of contact, and they should have all the information that you need. The GSA will tend to step in if if they are not helping, if they are just super busy, or they can't help you with something, or if you have a breakdown there. That's where the GSA tends to be the most useful. Your department, each department has a graduate studies and postdoctoral affairs chair whose job is to oversee and hear issues from the graduate students. Usually they'll hear those issues through your department graduate student association. But I have also directly contacted them with issues, and they do respond that they are supposed to direct you to resources when you contact them. And then of course there's like the department chair, and then the dean of your faculty. These are all individuals whose part of their responsibility is to make sure that graduate students are safe and know how to navigate the system. So even if they don't respond to your email, they'll definitely get it. And usually their advisor will point you in, their assistant or their administrative assistant will help point you in the right direction if you reach out to them for help. There are general offices that are also available to help you. So the Office of Graduate Studies and Postdoctoral Affairs is where you're going to hear a lot of information about funding. They usually will communicate a lot about funding, but it's also their responsibility to manage all of the other things that kind of encompass your life, including the TA roles or other behavior things. So they provide resources to help you navigate those systems as well. The UW Police Services is always there to help you if there are situations where you don't feel safe. Accessibility is an important office for helping navigate the systems, especially if you have accommodations for coursework or research work. We've recently been seeing a push to include more accessibility accommodations in lab work, because we have all these things set up for courses, and then it's important to recognize how for example, neurodivergence can affect your lab work as well. So there's been a push for that as well. And then the Human Rights, Equity, and Inclusion Office contains a number of sub offices that deal with specific issues, including the Sexual Violence Office, Prevention of Sexual Violence Office, and they also do crisis management and mediation. So they also provide the private counseling appointments that the GSA will also provide to help you navigate the systems when you need to. And then counseling services is available for all students for any reason for free. You can contact them to help at any time. So I'm going to go through a couple of the policies that I mentioned on the first slide and talk about how they affect your life. a little bit, and then we're gonna hit some questions. So policy 33 is probably the one that you're gonna hear a lot about. This is the ethical behavior policy. And the main takeaway from this policy is that you have a right on campus to feel safe. So that's safe from discrimination, that's safe from harassment, and that's safe from poisoned work environments. This policy also says that you may not discriminate, harass, or poison a work environment. It covers both the positive and negative of that. But it is under this policy that you are protected from things like sexual and workplace harassment. So under this policy, if you are in any sort of unsafe situation, you can find help to get out of that unsafe situation. So I'm going to dive into employment policies really quickly. So policy 30 is the employment of graduate student teaching assistants. So most funding agreements that you have with the university will include teaching assistantships, unless you're in engineering, because then it's weird. But so teaching assistantship positions are arranged by your academic department and paid through human resources. So any concerns about a teaching assistant position funding, like payment, will go through human resources. But then you can have concerns about like the allocation of teaching assistantships, and then those will go to your department. The pay for a TA is paid at an hourly rate set by the university. And we have a maximum on our campus. We have a maximum of 160 hours per week. The department cannot require that you work more than this. You can work more than this, but they cannot require it of you. Because so many TAs on our campus do work more than 10 hours, there's currently an investigation and probably being adopted soon, a bump of the average of 10 hours per week to an average of 20 hours per week, but that will be opt-in only. So students can take on 20 hours per week, but they are not required to. And those 10 hours include preparing for classes that you teach, answering student emails, talking to students about their assignments, marking all of the assignments and exams, proctoring exams, running tutorials. Everything has to be encompassed by that 160 hours. And it's an average of 10 per week, but it doesn't have to be 10 per week because, of course, as students that some weeks will have higher workload than others. So it's a general average, but it can't exceed 160. So if you're asked to exceed that, you are protected from having to do that if you can't handle that burden. If you want to, feel free. I'm very passionate about teaching, and I tend to want to go over and above for my students, but the university cannot require that you do that, and it's important that you know that. Now we're going to dive a little bit into the academic policies. So policy 70 is student petitions and grievances. So policy 71 is student discipline. And under student discipline, you can, no, that's student appeals. Sorry, I'm talking about student petitions and grievances. So student petitions and grievances are basically something has happened to you at the university and you don't, like academically, and you don't agree with it. So you would petition, so a case where you would petition is if you had an exam and the night before the exam, your dog died. Like, knock on wood, I hope that never happens to you, but you have that like moment of grief before the exam and you perform really bad on that exam and you bomb that exam and you end up failing the course because of that. You can petition to redo your grade, rewrite the exam. It's basically a petition is you want to be excused from the rules because you have extenuating circumstances. So that is when you would petition. And if you ever are in a case where you need to petition, you can always talk to the GSA or your department about how to do that. And then a grievance is where something treated you unfairly and you want to appeal that decision. So if you walk into a lecture and the professor is like hates you, like not your class, not all engineers, not all women, just you specifically, actually women also, if they were super sexist, you can also grieve that. But if you walk into a class and a professor is treating you unfairly because of something related to your identity, then you can grieve that and you can grieve the marks that they give you. You can say, I don't deserve to fail this course because I was treated unfairly. And that is another process that the university that the GSA can help you, or your department can help you with. So a petition is where the rules were right, but you had extenuating circumstances, like something terrible happened in your life that the rules could not predict. And then a grievance is where you were treated unfairly, and then the rules didn't help you, like someone didn't follow the rules, you were treated unfairly. And that's the difference between the two. It can be kind of confusing. If you go to the GSA or your department and you're like, I don't know if this is a petition or a grievance, part of our job is to help figure that out with you. So you don't need to worry about it too much. But it's important to know that you can do both of those things throughout your time at the University of Waterloo. And so a student appeal is based on a decision. So you can petition if the rules were fair, but you had extenuating circumstances. You grieve if the rules weren't fair or if the rules weren't followed, and you appeal if a decision was made and you don't agree with it. So if you were accused of an academic integrity violation, or if you were accused of harassing someone and it's false, then you can appeal that decision. You can provide evidence that it was like it didn't happen, or you're being falsely accused. So usually what will happen is you'll go through a first process. So if you are accused of an academic integrity violation, it's not over and done with. There's an investigation, and then usually the dean, one of the associate deans of your faculty, will make a decision on the case, and then you can appeal that decision. So you must be able to provide new evidence or a serious procedural error or an unreasonable penalty in order to appeal a decision, because the university assumes that the original decision was just, and so you need to prove that the original decision was not just. But if you ever have any of those concerns, again, the GSA and your department should be able to help you through it. So under the academic policies, you have 3 things you can do. You can petition, you can grieve, and you can appeal. And now I'm going to talk a little bit about intellectual property rights. So intellectual property created through teaching or research at UW is owned by the creators. So if you create a process or anything really, you own it, which is not really true at a lot of other universities. At your previous institutions, it's possible that the university would then own any IP you generated. And here at Waterloo, part of the reason why we're such a big entrepreneurship school is you can build something in a class and then take it to market and make a small business out of it. And there's no institution getting in the way of that. In fact, Waterloo is very supportive of you doing that and offers a lot of entrepreneurship support, including the entrepreneurship department in engineering, the Business and Entrepreneurship Center, where you can take courses with them to grow your product and stuff. When we encounter policy 73 is cases where this kind of has conflict. So an outside contract might come in and run an event at Waterloo, like a hackathon, and the hackathon policy might state that the hackathon owns any IP you generate, whereas the Waterloo IP policy says that you own any IP you generate. And so that's when we have some kind of conflicts there, and those can be really tricky and are hard to resolve. So it's important to understand what you're getting yourself into when you sign up for these competitions and hackathons and conferences where they can sometimes say that they own your IP. So it's important to keep an eye out for that, because in some cases it won't matter, because if the university already owns your IP, you don't care who owns it afterwards. But at Waterloo, it can be very tricky. But this includes all of the papers that you author, all of the coursework you generate. This includes any patents or innovations you have. It includes any teaching materials you generate for the courses that you TA or co-teach, and it includes any data you collect throughout your experiments. That's all IP that you own. The Waterloo doesn't own it, so that can be very beneficial for you in terms of your academic career, and it can be very confusing at times. So we can help you navigate that if you have any questions about where your IP is going or where it's coming from or who owns it. But yeah, so thank you for coming to this high-level summary of the UW policies and where they are and how to navigate them. It was kind of quick. I didn't want to get into the nitty-gritty details because sometimes like we're just not going to absorb all the information. And I have a couple prepared questions, but you can all ask any questions that you have now as well. I'm happy to answer any questions. I think I have to let you all talk individually. Okay. So for people who joined late, we are recording. So if you don't want to talk out loud, you don't have to. And feel free to type in the chat because I have the chat open. If you have any questions, I'm going to answer a couple of my prepared questions. So you can think about it if you have any questions. And then if you don't, then we can all have a lovely day. So my first question that I prepared comes from Policy 32, pets on university property. So policy 32, so my question is, can I have my dog, can I walk my dog on campus? And so the pets on university property policy states that you can have a dog on campus as long as it is leashed or somehow otherwise controlled. So they don't go into the specifics of different harnessing, but you're totally allowed to walk any pet on campus. Dogs are not allowed in university buildings according to the policy, unless they are service dogs. And then there's a different policy that governs that. But if you're out one morning and you're like, wow, the campus is beautiful and I'm walking my dog, you are totally welcome to walk your dog on campus, which is a fun policy question. And then my other prepared question goes back to this list here. So what do I do if for some reason I'm uncomfortable with my supervisor? So this can be related to a number of different things. So if, for example, if you're in your lab and you're constantly experiencing like sexual harassment, and you go to your supervisor and your supervisor doesn't care, or like doesn't do anything about it, like what do you do after that? And sometimes it can, and it's possible that it might even be coming from your supervisor. So what do you do in that case? And so you're supposed to go talk to your department graduate coordinator, or you're supposed to go talk to your department chair. But your professor, your professor has all these contacts in your department. He's been working here for 10 plus years. He's like best friends with the department chair. You don't think the department chair is going to care either, or you're worried that your supervisor is going to hear that you like spoke ill about him, and then he's going to get mad at you. Like what do you do in that case? So what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to be able to talk to, there's two things you can do. You can go to another person in your faculty that you're comfortable with. So I know a lot of the new associate, for example, in engineering, we have two associate deans, Carolyn McGregor and Mary Robinson, who are very strong champions of students. And so you can go to them with any concern and they will help you through it, and they will go to bat for you. But if you don't know who those faculty members are, you can also come to us, the GSA. We can help you navigate the situation. We can help equip you with resources and the next step of who to talk to. We can help mediate the situation with your supervisor and sit in on meetings with you and your supervisor. And you can also go to the Human Rights, Equity, and Inclusion Office, because that's also part of their job, is to help navigate those situations. So that was my fun question, the can I walk my dog? And then my tough question, what do I do if I don't feel safe with my supervisor? I am now accepting any other questions. I'll wait a couple of minutes, and then if there are no questions, then we're pretty much done. I'll also give you my email. My email is gsapolicy@uwaterloo.ca. If you have any policy questions after this presentation, or if you want more explanation on something that I only broadly covered, you can always email me. I'm happy to answer policy questions. I really love working with the GSA and on policy, and so if you do email me, it will not be any trouble at all. All right. Well, thank you all for coming. I hope you have a lovely day. Feel free to contact me. And yeah, bye.